Hey fish friends, what's going on? Today I'm going to show you how to culture and harvest freshwater amphipods, also known as scuds. They're one of the easiest live foods to culture. They're also really nutritious and a great source of food for your fish. Let's get started. These are the scuds or amphipods that I pulled out of my tank. They're actually pretty fun to watch swim around. They tend to lay on their sides a lot. If you see one that's attached to another, they'll do this for a few days during the mating process. The males will hang on to the females, and then once she sheds her exoskeleton, she'll basically lay the eggs at that point, or let them hatch and I guess be free of them and the male at that point. So if that's what you see, you know what's going on. Most scuds around the world are actually marine organisms. There is one fairly common genus called Gammarus, which is most likely what these scuds are, and most likely what yours are if they're freshwater. Even though scuds look quite a bit like shrimp, they're actually what's called amphipods. The root of that word means feet everywhere or on all sides, which is kind of what these guys look like, whereas shrimps are decapods, meaning 10 feet. The only materials that you'll need today are a starter culture, which you can order online or maybe buy at your local fish store. You'll need an established aquarium and ideally a canister filter, though that's not completely necessary. The canister does make harvesting a lot easier and you'll be able to collect a lot more of them, but if you don't, there's another trick I got up my sleeve. When you get your amphipod starter colony, I'd recommend you just throw it into your aquarium. Maybe wait till night so that your fish don't see them. If you have a carpet, that's really ideal because the scuds or amphipods will spend most of their time in the carpet and the substrate layer underneath it. Scuds are nocturnal, so I'm not surprised that I'm not seeing any when I'm looking at the carpeting plant and substrate underneath, but I was just digging around in my Monte Carlo the other day, had to rip a huge chunk of it out and replant, and I saw hundreds of them swimming around everywhere, so I know that they're in there. If you pop that line on at night, you'll quickly startle them, you'll see them scattering to go back under the substrate, but that's the best way to know if you have them and they've established a good colony in your aquarium. After you've had your amphipod colony for 2 or 3 months, you should be ready for your first big harvest. The way I would go about that is I would pull your canister filter off and open it up. Now that we've got this filter opened up, it's time to start peeling back the chambers and seeing what we got inside. And you can see one little guy zigging around right there. They really don't like the light though, so pretty much as soon as you open it up, you're gonna start spooking them. Oh, I see a couple more swimming around. Really, they're gonna be in this biological filtration area. They're probably not gonna accumulate too much in the sponges, just because there's not really enough space for them. I don't really see much going on right now, but I'll keep pulling them out. At this point, you're just going to dump the canister filter water right into the bucket. Try and get it in the net. That way you can catch any of the amphipods in here in the net, so you don't have to go through and scoop them out later. Obviously, that did not go so well. Then take your canister filter water and dump it into a bucket. The point of the filter is not just to collect amphipods. It's got a whole bunch of plant debris in here and a few cherry shrimp, so I'll need to go ahead and clean that out. The easiest way to separate them out is to slowly move the water over into another container. You can just dump it out if you want, but since I have cherry shrimp in here and I don't want them to end up anywhere, doing it like this, I'm able to look in each little container before I dump the water, make sure I don't have any shrimpies in there. I do love my cherry shrimp. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is pour the contents of this bucket into this pitcher. And you'll see why in a second. Now that I got this pitcher full of potentially good critters, I can pour it into this net. And at this point, I'm just going to go through here and try and catch as many shrimp as I can, and then just let them back into my tank. The shrimp are actually a lot easier to catch than the amphipods, so that should hopefully make things easy. And then I can just pour the remainders of this back into a little container, and that should give me just the amphipods left. So I mentioned another method earlier. If you don't have a canister filter, it'll be really hard to go through your hang-on back. Actually, this might work with a sponge filter. I think amphipods do like to colonize coarse sponge as long as there's enough space in between the material for them to live and, fit between and maneuver. So a sponge filter would work, but hang on the back, not as much. So what I do is I just take a piece of zucchini, stick it on the bottom of the aquarium, and then come back the next morning before my lights turn on and pull the slice up, but make sure I get a mesh net underneath so that as the amphipods try and escape, they fall into the net. And as you can see, I got a few doing this method. Other times have been far more successful, but it is kind of variable, and as you can see, not nearly as much as with going through my canister. Now for the fun part, feeding. I'm starting off with my betta Ricky. Bettas do like to feed at the surface, so he is having a little bit of a hard time catching on. The scuds tend to sink to the bottom or swim to the bottom because they like to be in that substrate layer. Oh, there we go. He's starting to figure it out. Hopefully the scuds will colonize this tank and give him some forage so he has something to do during the days, go around, look for some food, and that'll also be a good source of nutrition for him. As for this tank, I thought the rams might be the only ones interested in the scuds, but turns out the Cories, Venezuelan high fins, were super excited, as well as my sparkling gourami, who's pretty small, but he is feisty. He actually puts the rams in their place. So overall, this has been a really fun project. It didn't take me too much time. There's a bit of sorting involved, but I didn't have to set up a separate container or anything to breed them, do extra water changes or anything. This is maybe the easiest live food, and they get a little bit larger than other things like baby brine shrimp or grindle worms, so they're good for larger fish like small cichlids, maybe even some medium-sized ones. If you learned anything today, make sure to hit that like and sub button. Thanks for watching. Till next time, see ya!